Today, we welcome Ben Wengel, who's the NGC Chief Grader and Senior Vice President of World Coins. He's firmly established himself as one of the industry's foremost authority on world coins, a top expert in attribution, authentication, and grading. Ben has written extensively on counterfeit detection for NGC, and he's conducted numerous educational seminars around the world, including at the ANA Summer Seminar, where he was the lead instructor of advanced study of world issues in 2023. Ben began collecting at the age of 8. By 16, he had completed both the ANA Summer Seminar Advanced Grading course and a 6-week summer internship. While attending University of Tampa, he worked at NGC 3 days a week. And after graduation, he joined on a full-time basis. And now 15 years later, Ben is the leader of the NGC grading team. It's really exciting to meet you today, Ben. For me, this is the first time we've met, and you told me quickly already about your commute from Tampa into Sarasota, which was a tremendous thing that young people will do when they're hungry. And I also read here that you're a passionate collector of silver and gold coins from South and Central America, which is super cool. That's like something I wish I was a collector of myself. Really into that Central American Republic coinage personally, although I've never collected it. So Ben, welcome. And Jeff, thanks for bringing Ben on today's episode. And why don't you take it from here?
Great. Well, thanks, Ben, for coming on the show with us. We have been in the past, we've had mostly hobby leaders and people who are run companies that are men directors and things. But today we're having someone that's kind of behind the scenes. And I think a lot of people will find it fascinating because it's kind of like the nuts and bolts about, someone in grading coins is like integral to all our business. And it'll be kind of neat to have like someone lift the curtain and have a little discussion about what goes on in your world, because I think it's really, a lot of people have a lot of would be very curious to see about how it works.
Sure.
So to get started, Ben, how did you get started in numismatics? What was your origin story?
Yeah. So I come from a family of collectors, actually. Like, my grandfather was an electrician by trade, but he collected Israeli and Palestinian mandate coinage, in addition to a little bit of US. He was actually a secretary in the American Israeli Numismatic Association in the 70s. So he's the one that really started it all off. And then my father was a collector. He did like a raw set of cap bust halves when I was a kid that I vividly remember, the 2x2 pages with all the cap bust halves in there. So when I turned 8, my dad brought up the subject of collecting coins, and I had a pretty positive response to it. I was interested, and I gravitated towards Franklin half dollars, actually. I think that was probably because my dad was collecting half dollars, and Franklins are kind of in that quasi vintage yet still accessible from a price point aspect. So that's really where I started.
Oh, that's neat. And then I guess, of course, we'll talk about it later, but world coins became an interest, I guess, more focused later. So, so how did you actually become a grader at NGC? How did that start?
Yeah, so I was working for a dealer out in Cleveland, where I'm from, Todd Abbey at Cameo CC, and one of his employees was a mutual acquaintance with Rick Montgomery, the president of NGC. And I guess there was a little bit of back and forth between them. They said that, the coin shop said, "Oh, we've got this younger guy. He seems like he, has the chops, and he was really interested in an internship." And it just kind of worked out from there. So the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school, I had a 6-week internship at NGC, and that's really what started it.
That's great. Did they start off with a grading test, or how did they decide that you were kind of worthy of being there? Because a lot of people wonder, what if you go for an internship, what's the first thing they do? They have you look at boxes and, test you on a daily basis or something? How's that work?
Yeah, so I think I did have a little bit of credentials. I had worked in the coin shop. I had completed an ANA summer seminar course on grading and done, pretty decently well in that. So that was helpful in getting in the door. But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of going through the whole gauntlet, honestly. I was looking at modern coins. I was looking at coins and holders that were more vintage. I was handling some of like the attribution aspects of it. So really kind of a pretty broad range.
They give you pretty good feedback and mentorship
Yeah.
through that process. And
Oh yeah, excellent feedback.
well,
Right.
that's
So
neat.
grading
Yeah.
is not something you're born with. I mean, you know, there are people who have an eye, right? And some people don't have an eye for it or don't have the temperament or whatever we could say about that. But it's still something, you know, if you're watching this video and you're thinking about, could I be a grader at NGC? I mean, you have to have a certain set of skills, I think, that you guys are looking for, but then you
Yeah.
get taught the rest, correct? I mean, and part of that temperament is patience and really tell us some of, you know, what that's like. What do you learn when you come in green, but you have the chops like you said you did?
Yeah. So, you know, I think when people talk about grading, it's kind of a bit of a misnomer, right? Like, because there's really more than one aspect to grading a coin. Yeah, I like to talk about it as like a pyramid, right? With three sections to it. Your base is about authenticity, right? Because that's the most important part of it. Like, is the coin even real, right? So that's your foundational piece of that pyramid. The middle piece is attribution. Okay, this is real or it's fake, but what is this? You know, that's really that next most important crucial piece to solving the puzzle of, you know, the entire coin. And then at the top, that's where we actually have the quality aspect of like how nice is this coin, right? So you need the authenticity portion and the attribution portion to get to that grade portion. So that's something that I encounter all the time where people talk about grading and it seems that they might think that grading is really just putting numbers on coins and not all of that background that also goes into the process.
Yeah, I teach advanced coin grading at summer seminar. One of the first things I have to teach people is to do is this coin even gradable? You know,
Right.
because I mean, how many coins that you look at? First thing you do is, was that, is that coin got like a scratch, or has it got environmental damage, or does it have something? So, it's every coin has its own tricky little aspect, and I'm sure World is adds like a whole nother 10 dimensions to it to make it, especially your authentication part, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more. But I can see it's there's a lot more to it when you just pick up a coin and just like throwing a number at it. So it's a lot more complex than that. So
Yes.
Right,
so
oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I mean,
I was okay.
but if you jump in and say as a junior grader at a NGC, for example, do you come in and they say, okay, you're going to grade modern coins, which eliminates, I guess, a large that whole bottom part of the pyramid. So you don't have to worry about authenticity because we just got a mint sealed, monster box of silver eagles, and it's your job to assign a grade. So, and I was also going to ask you about the foundational aspect of alteration, because that is a huge, you didn't mention that. So I was curious about it because, in the grading room, there's always people trying to trick you, right? I mean, it's you against the world, in my opinion. And so we're not just talking about people who send terrible Chinese counterfeits and they're super easy to tell it's counterfeit. But
Right.
what you guys see must be the worst of the worst in terms of really insidious, clever alterations, or
Yes.
let's say grease is applied to the surface so you can't tell that it's got a scratch. Tell me about that. I mean, does everybody grade, or you take the junior graders, they do the silver eagles, they get, okay, now we know you can do the top of the pyramid, right? It's a 69 or a 70 or whatever, but now we're going to take you into vintage bust halves and high grade ones and so on.
Yeah, so I think it's tailored to an individual's ability, honestly. But I think that what you're describing is a pretty fair pathway for someone that's fairly junior, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're going to start on kind of like your kind of like ultra modern stuff, your 21st century Silver Eagles, where basically you're just determining 70 or 69, because those are the two most prevalent grades for those kinds of coins. So yeah, like you're eliminating the authentication portion largely and the attribution portion as well, and you're just focusing on the grade. And then yeah, from there we can build those skills and branch out more. And yeah, I think the logical progression from that would be more vintage US material and then possibly world after that as it gets more and more involved. But
There's some people become like modern graders, they go there and they do, and that's what they do. That's their career. That's what they're suited for, I guess, maybe be the right word for it. So do you have there are people there at NGC like that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we have people that have been doing modern coins for 15, 20 years. They're
Interesting.
finalizers and they're, essentially the heads of their department and, they're the final say on modern coins. And yeah, it's absolutely a viable career.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. So some people might think it's just like they throw you there first to move you on up, but that is a career, that is his career in its own right. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, I would say that's where your biggest need is, because you get more, volume wise. That's, by far I'm sure you get a lot more Silver Eagles than you do Morgan dollars. So you've got to, have, people to, you got to have the manpower on that at all times to do that. So
Absolutely.
how do you guys handle seasonality with modern graders? With it being like, okay, now I'm just making a number up, 100,000 Silver Eagles, and then you might not get any for 6 months. You guys have them on maybe world modern. Does that cross over? Like, world guys and modern's a modern guy, doesn't matter what country it's from.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we shift resources. Yeah, we have the World Modern Guides help out during Eagle season. Sometimes even some of the US vintage guys will jump in and grab some monster boxes and get on it too.
And they
Yeah.
love that. So I think that's the day I'd be like, my back hurts or something. So
I loved how you differentiated between 21st century Silver Eagle graders and obviously 20th century Silver Eagle graders. Like, when you first start, you only get 21st century. You don't get those 1986s until your second year at NGC.
Well, I just think that as you go back in the modern era, it does get more nuanced. As you get into like kind of the modern commems and some of the other, areas.
It's just amazing to think of nuance in what Jeff and I know is modern today, because in the 1990s and the 80s and 90s, when grading first started, anything made, I don't know, after, let's say, if it was a memorial center later, it was just modern,
Sure.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But
there's still big differences on some. A 95W Silver Eagle's worth, $3,000 in 69 and $12,000 to $15,000 in 70. So that's a big dollar point. So yeah, that's a big, you and I could probably never tell the difference, John, but does make a big difference on how that label comes out.
No, for sure, it matters, and it matters. And Ben, I'm curious about. We know that Silver Eagles are such a huge part of the modern, American collecting business. Are some of these world coins becoming following in that footstep? I mean, this is something that's quite interesting. I mean, are Philharmonics or coins made from other world mints getting graded yet, or Maple Leafs?
Yeah, I'd say we see a pretty healthy amount of things like Mexican onzas, from the 80s forward. See a lot of Krugerrands, both silver and gold, now that they're making the silvers. Yeah, Canadian maples, we get those. Occasional Austrian Philharmonics, but I'd say that's not quite as popular. But yeah, Britannias, of course. Yeah, all that.
You say Onza, is that the Libertad? Is that the same? Are you saying the same thing? The 1 ounce Libertad is a hugely popular coin. It seems to me, from what I see, in this chair and the market, that's like a big. Would you say that's the second most popular silver bullion coin, or the most popular outside of the U.S., or no?
I'd say it's got to either be that or a panda. Because the panda market is pretty robust,
sure,
historically speaking. Yeah.
I know it's the panda market is robust, but it's a lot of guys I know, mass marketers. I guess is that market more in Asia than, because I think for the American market, the tariffs and stuff that really became a problem a long time ago.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is more popular in actual mainland China and other Asian countries.
I want to backpedal a little bit. Actually, a question I was going to ask earlier. So you decided to be a coin grader for NGC, as a career option. Obviously, so long. And I know some people come there just to kind of it's like their coin college to learn to become coin dealers. Do you see when you have guys come in, it's like you can tell, this is like my coin college. I want to learn about coins, but I really don't want to grade full time. And you yourself, I guess, did you come to like a crossroads, like, I'm going to do this and I don't really want to go be a trader? So how's that? How do you, because I think, just recently I've heard a couple of, around grading companies around the country, a couple of the top guys decided they are going to stop grading coins and become traders. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think people will think that's an interesting subject about that, deciding what to do as far as your job options.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think everybody eventually goes through some kind of machination about, what they want to do with their career or if they want to change or something like that. For me, I really liked the stability of NGC, the ability to see like the plethora of coins that I'm able to see, the experts that I was able to lean on and learn from. All of those were really positive attributes that I thought were like really instrumental to furthering my career and my understanding of coins. So I can't say that I ever seriously considered leaving NGC. But it's a completely different thing. At NGC, it's much more stable. You're largely just staying in Sarasota the whole time.
Travel gets old, let me tell you.
Sure, sure. And as a coin dealer, yeah, you're running the show circuit. It's a very much like you eat what you kill kind of scenario. You're always searching for that next
Yeah, you're only.
door.
I just want to tell people, even for myself, I get things, but I'm only as good as my last deal. Next
Right.
week's not guaranteed I'll have a deal. So
Yeah.
that's stability. I might come apply. Sounds good to me. So
Jeff, you're as good as your last 25 deals. Stop.
my last 25.
They all
Okay.
average out pretty well for you.
But I know
I
they're
don't think
coming,
that's
but
a
I still
problem.
sweat getting the next one. So it's no matter, even though I've been doing it for 50 years, I still sweat the next one. So
The fear of failure.
that's it.
Right.
That is.
Right. Well,
Um,
it's a good thing. I appreciate it as well. I mean, I was a trader forever like Jeff, and then I actually switched, and now I'm in the publishing side of everything, which is a unique in the sense that almost no one else has done that except for the folks that work here at Whitman. So I get it. I enjoy it a lot more. I never really, I did it for 35 years or so, bought and sold coins every day, risk, right? Every day an inventory sitting somewhere, God forbid something happens, or metal prices change on you dramatically, or bad checks, any of those things that cause, fear, the thing that keeps a coin dealer up at night, all coin dealers have the same nightmarish dream, right, Jeff? Which is that I left a suitcase on the curb at the airport. I still wake up. It's been good 10 years since I did a coin show with inventory, and I still wake up having dreams. Thank God that was a dream, because I left the briefcases on the curb, and I am in an Uber in the wrong direction, and my phone went dead, and I can't go back to it. Whatever happens in these torturous nightmares. So it is a great thing to work at a company like NGC and have that stability and learn from the best. And look where you've gone with it. It's just tremendous. I mean, it's just tremendous what you've done.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, you mentioned earlier. So because I want to educate people too that watch these podcasts. So with authentication, what are some like red flags when you know, okay, this, the guy, someone snuck in a fake, or the whole box is fake, or when you see things, what are some of the things that kind of set off the alarm bells, and or if someone's out buying coins, what should they be careful about?
Sure, sure. So I think John touched on this already a little bit, right? When we talk about authentication, there's two portions of that. There's just outright counterfeits, and then you have alterations, right? So for things like alterations, before you even look at the coin, having context is extremely important to the process, right? So like knowing your key dates, knowing if something's a better type. Those are things that, you should hopefully know in advance, or at least do some research on prior to having the coin in your hands, right? Because then at least you have some background, like, okay, I know this is a key date coin. I need to be, like really dialed in, make sure this is real, make sure this isn't altered, right?
Especially
So
when it's a mint mark, that's all the value.
exactly, yeah, or like the last digit of a date, right? So when we're looking at things like alterations, that's really front of mind, like, is this a key date coin? Or like, is this a, like a better mint mark, better date situation? And then basically we're just looking at the coin, like, are we seeing like a small area on the coin where there's a different color change than the rest of the coin, or maybe there's a lot of like buildup or residue that's just around one date digit very conspicuously, or you can have this like in this like relief difference that just doesn't really make sense, where you have a 4-digit date, the first 3 digits of the date are all the same relief, and then the fourth digit is either, like inset or raised more than it should be. So like all of those things should be, like keying someone in that maybe there's something that's not quite right. And after that, you should be doing things like potentially die matching to like a genuine example.
Yeah, get more
So
advanced.
yeah, yeah.
Is-
And so for counterfeits, it's kind of the same thing from a contextual standpoint, just knowing what's better, what's rare. But then it's also knowing like how these issues come, what the surface texture is like. Should there be differentiation in texture or surface quality between the fields and the devices, and what should that look like? So it's really just kind of going through the machinations and the process of evaluating the coin on a more granular level.
Yeah, well, that's what's good about being an NGC, because you get to see so many genuine coins. When something's not real, it can stand out, because if you just do like one and done, that's a different thing. I know when I've been to NGC a few times, like just walking around the back rooms and stuff, you guys have some like sophisticated, don't you have some like metal analysis machines and
Yes, yes.
and microscopes and things like that? So you actually have some mechanical little head start with some of that stuff, or advantages of that, those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah, we use the X-ray metal tester pretty frequently. Yeah, not just for authentication, but also for determining metallic composition on things like metals. You get a lot of metals that could be like gilt or silvered. And so that can be really helpful in knowing like, hey, this is plated. Or if you get a weird read on there, then you go and do a specific gravity test and you really make sure that it's actually, solid gold.
Yeah, I have actually, I have it on my desk here. I had someone at one of the coin shows gave me a Cayman Islands gold coin, and it was silver.
Yeah.
And I put it up, and then I sent it to NGC, and it came back not encapsulated, plated.
Yeah.
So you probably use your machine, and that's what that would happen. So he
Yeah,
he was
that's
hoping he was hoping for a unique pattern. It didn't work out so well. So
what's the accuracy of those? Is it a gamma machine or something? What that's shooting? What is it shooting into the coin to determine its
Yeah,
composition?
yeah, it's using X-rays to just measure basically metallic composition of like a couple microns deep. So honestly, if you have a coin that has like a pretty thick plating, the metal tester might not resolve the issue that you're having, and that's when we go to specific gravity if we get something that's inconclusive.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you guys? I know you guys guarantee authenticity. Do you guys have to buy coins back occasionally and take a few coins off the market and learn from mistakes and things? I assume that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. It's just going to happen. But, the important thing is the NGC guarantee,
Right.
that, it's really a consumer protection program that exists so that, people can recoup their original investment in a coin if something does end up being problematic in an NGC holder.
This is the last question about authenticity. Do you see like the counterfeiters getting better and better at what they're doing? Like I still have not seen an American silver dollar that like would fool me. I mean, when it was like I even had to look very long at. But I assume I've heard Chinese coins, some of them are so good now that you really got to spend a lot of time to decide if they're real or not. And I don't know, they haven't done that same level of expertise on US coins. I don't know if you've seen Chinese coins that are like, man, they're getting really good at this.
Yeah, so it's funny, there's a bit of a two-pronged answer to that. I think that the technology that counterfeiters are using is constantly getting better. The way that they're making transfer dies, they're always getting better at that process. And I'm sure they're using things like 3D printing to make transfer dies and things like that to really, make their craft even better. And that's definitely a treacherous area. But I think that another area is some of the older counterfeits, things like electrotypes that were made a century ago or even earlier than that. They tend to be really well made. And the fact that they're actually legitimately old, they end up picking up patina. And so you have these counterfeits that actually have like legitimate patina on them. And sometimes they come from like fairly storied collections. And so, people just
So
kind of,
pedigree doesn't always guarantee authenticity. So
right,
yeah, and
right.
I think some of the artificial wear and patina that on some of the counterfeits I've seen is really one of the most interesting things. I'd like to know how they do that. They can take a copper coin and make it look like it was 200 years old. It's really amazing what they do on that. So that's fun. Um, Going back to you talking about attribution a little bit, I wanted to ask you about this too, because especially with John being with Whitman, you know, a lot of the tools for like some of the books, like they're not making like some of the Krauss catalogs and things like that. And like for attribution, what are some of the tools you guys use now? And I'm sure I know it's really big on John's radar about, you know, providing some of those tools going forward. And it'd be interesting to see what you guys have a conversation about, you know, what's out there that you use and what could be made that would make your job easier.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so we have a fairly extensive library at NGC, but you're right. A lot of those books are out of print, or they're in a different language, so they're not as accessible for
Yeah.
someone living in the United States. Um, but there's other resources that we have that are available to other people as well. Things like Numista is a great online reference for attribution of basically any world or ancient type. And
What's that website again? What is it?
Numista.
Numista. I've never used that.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
interesting.
it's a great resource. Yeah, I use it every day.
Oh, okay.
There's coin archives, which most
Yeah.
people just view as, a way to get pricing data, but it's also a very powerful tool for authentication and attribution as well. There's things like the Newman Numismatic portal, where you can find a lot of older books, auction catalogs, things like that wouldn't be as accessible if that, didn't exist. And then at NGC, we of course have things like our internal photo database. We have our, all of the buybacks that we've encountered over the years that we still look at occasionally and
That's a
look
great
at.
resource.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys should exhibit those at coin shows sometimes. That'd be kind of cool because I'd love to go through them and take a look at them, or if you had them out in a case, because I think that'd be, I get coins across the counter every day, and I'm like wondering about about them being real and things. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I probably pulled 40 or 50 of those pieces for my ANA summer seminar class. And I think that's one part that people were really, really interested in and really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them. So you're, as we talked about it, but it seems like I have a pretty much answer. So do you like it? The grading do you have fun doing it? I've been in a dark room doing it all day. I had a hard time just focusing and concentrating, not like wanting to go do something or trading, but I guess it's like kind of like a focus thing. You have to, if you can do that, you can do that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think that a lot of people think that it's almost like a library setting, right? Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. They keep to themselves. And that's not really how it is at NGC, especially in the World Department. We have like an extremely collaborative process. We're constantly talking to each other, like bouncing things off of each other, discussing coins. And that always keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Scott, you work with Scott Schechter too,
I
right?
do. Yeah, Scott and I work
He's a
very
great
closely.
guy. He's a lot of fun, and he's got super smart guy too. So, and he
Yeah.
kind of transitioned over from US to world, right?
Yeah, he did. So I transferred over in like mid 2015, and I want to say he came over about 6 months after I did.
Yeah. No one's going to ask you about it. I know you're doing the world coins and things. I think when I first met you, you were a friend of my son, Ben Garrett. And when I first met you, you were like VAMs were your thing. I remember having dinner with you one night and we were talking, that's probably, gosh, over 10 years ago at least.
Oh, yeah.
And so what's your interest in VAM dollars? Because it's actually been a subject that John and I have talked about quite a bit just recently. And because we're trying to figure out how to represent them in some of the books and the different like Red Book and Mega Red and things. So is that really is that kind of an original passion of yours with VAM dollars?
Yeah, so I was at a coin show in Ohio. I was probably 13 or 14. And I was at a dealer's table, and the guy pulls out like a top 50 piece dollar book. And he's like,
It's dollars. Okay.
yeah, he's like, you could go around all these tables and look for these varieties, and if you find them, I'll pay you the full book value in here. And
Really?
so as like
I
a
got your attention.
teenager, I saw an opportunity as like a cherry picker, essentially. So,
Yeah.
go find these varieties and And, that was like a way of, making money and expanding my knowledge at the same time. But I think VAMs were a really wonderful resource for me in terms of like understanding what's possible in the minting process, what's hubbed versus punched into a die, like how double dies even work,
And die
things like
progression, all that stuff.
right, right.
Yeah. That's neat. Well, it's neat to be able to have something to your origin of like that was you learned a lot about the manufacturing process just by studying is doing that. So
Absolutely.
what's your favorite VAM dollar? You have one. I like Scarface. You kind of like Scarface.
Yeah, I think that 1888 O's in general are just pretty fascinating. I don't know what was happening in New Orleans in 1888, but you have this like just plethora of various die varieties that are like really like visually enticing to people. You have a
Yeah,
Scarface, you have a Hot Lips,
yeah,
you have other minor things like a Shooting Star, which is a little less known, but still very dramatic.
yeah.
So I think to me, that's kind of like one of the best dates for VAMs.
Oh, well, that's fun. Well, we'll switch back to the world because that's your market. So, how are you seeing the market change around the like your? Because I guess you guys have a good feel for like what's going on commercially because you see what comes into your place.
Yeah.
So, like I know you guys have offices in places like Munich and Shanghai, and what trends are you seeing in the international market as far as like what's coming in and what's going? What's the interest or what are you seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more dealers, collectors, auction houses submit collections to us. More and more people are buying into the concept of third-party graded holders. I can say when we were first going to Munich and doing grading events, we had a lot of dealers and auction houses that would submit to us, but they wanted photo certs. So they wanted us to look at it and render an opinion, but they didn't want the coin to actually be encapsulated because, I think at the time the European mentality was you want to actually hold the coins and not have it in a holder. And as we kept going back to Munich, those requests got more and more infrequent. And now we're at the point where essentially no one asks for a photo cert anymore. So I feel like third-party grading, especially from NGC, is really broadening its horizons throughout Europe and expanding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
I
mean,
know that auction thing is a big element because I buy and sell ancients quite a bit, and I can tell like when I'm submitting some really nice ancients, I get put on the back burner sometimes because they have an auction house will submit like a whole bunch of ancients and they got like a deadline. They had to have them ready for the auction.
Right.
So, they can push mine and push those, earlier. And because I obviously these auction houses are doing it because they're getting higher prices for graded coins, especially with ancients. So they call it a fine style. The market will reward that. One thing I was going to ask you was actually a little bit later in it on my questions, but I'll ask now: are the European and ancient and the Europeans and the Asians, are they collectors? Are they with certified third-party grading? Are they appreciating like the ultra high grades more like this? Like American markets, obviously people just go pay crazy prices for top pops, I guess. Is that top pop mentality starting to show up in those markets as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, we're starting to see like more clear price differentiation between grades and more exponential increases when you get to that top level. I think a really great example are things like check ducats, the 1923 to I guess technically 1950s series, where those coins can come pretty high grade, and you're seeing 67 sell for $3,000 and up for generic dates, which I don't think that ever would have happened if the coins had remained raw and were never encapsulated in third-party holders.
Yeah. Do you guys have a robust registry program for world coins, I assumed, or on things? Do you think that drives some of the market for that?
Yeah. I would say it probably drives more in the domestic side, US collectors that are collecting world. But I do think that Europeans and people in Asian countries are also involved in registry programs as well.
Well, that's
I mean,
interesting.
I think the European program has definitely changed in the last 5 years in terms of the Europeans' perception and desire to get coins graded by NGC specifically. I've seen dramatic increases from where I sit again, where I was just over in Berlin talking with someone who was cataloging the Traveler collection, which is the Jeff. I don't know if you've seen details on this thing. It's just, is it the world's greatest coin collection ever? Everyone wants to say that, but it's going to sell for north of 100 million when it's sold, all said and done. Really incredible fresh deal. And what they explained to me, and it's numismatic ars numismatica is selling that, and what they did was everything that's in the collection that was milled, right, what they call modern, if it's like what 1600s and all, and that's modern coinage versus ancient coinage. And they determined that market wants those coins in NGC holders. And they've slabbed all those. Even a few that were actually, I saw that they snuck a few other coins into holders as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's amazing, right? Because if they start doing Byzantine coins and things like that, then we've really made inroads. But it seems to me that NGC is the dominant player in Europe the go-to player if you have incredible collections to get sold. And I think they get it. What happened? How do you show coins to people at lot viewing? Now, if it's not in a holder, it could get damaged. Who knows what's going to happen to it? Shipping. I feel like there's everything about certification and third-party authentication, the guarantee. They're finally getting it over there. It's very interesting. And I've even had conversations with several of the people at World Mints telling me that they realize that the coins need to be in 70 holders or something to sell. Like when they're wanting to do marketing, and they realize the American market is it just leads in so many ways, that they want these coins graded by a third party, and the collectors want the 70s.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about that, John. I know from a couple of conversations with mass market companies, they've actually had to send representatives to the mint and I don't know some good examples, but they were like, this last batch you did, they only 69, and you got to, we can't sell them unless they're in 70. So they actually go back and go to the minting floor to try to, up the quality to do that. So they've been made very aware, if they want to sell into the American market for sure, that they've got to get those coins, perfect 70 for that market. And because the guy said, if you don't, we'll go to another mint that can make them, because they that's what the American market wants to do them. So it's funny how it even bleeds into the manufacturing process, where these guys are realizing that. So that's kind of fun. So way of doing them. Speaking of great collections, I know this one John just mentioned that collection, but the Traveler. But before that, the Ellie Brun collection, that you guys got that was I love a collection that's been on the market for 150 years or something like that, right? And they told the family they couldn't sell it for 100 years.
100 years.
Yeah, 100 years. But so he donated it. It sat for 100 years. But he was actively collecting for decades previous to that.
Yeah, that's just got to be a mess, like getting a time capsule of coins, I assume.
Well, the Traveler's the same way, Jeff. The Traveler was stored in the backyard, I think, of this person around Nazi, during pre-Nazi Germany, and I don't know if they've divulged where, what country it was. They told me it's going to come out later, but anyway, it was stored for safekeeping around 1930 something, and these coins have not seen the light. They are as fresh as the day is long in terms of market availability.
Yeah, it's just amazing what's still out there for discovery. I mean, even on the U.S. side, an 1804 dollar showing up that was unknown. It's like, boy, it's just, we've been as mature as the rare coin business is, it's still full of discoveries to be made and do. When the Ellie Braun collection, did you learn a lot about some? I mean, it had to be coins that had not ever crossed your guys' desk and stuff. So it had to be an incredibly educational experience, I would think.
Yeah, certainly, especially because it was Scandinavian material, and I feel like the Scandinavian market is a little more apprehensive about third-party grading than like the majority of continental Europe. And so that was a really great way for us to kind of like break into that market and have like just a better understanding of those coins and the context in there. So I mean, it was 20,000 pieces. Just the guy was, a collector, but he had dozens of duplicates of some types. So, just like a plethora of material that was available. And so, yeah, I mean, it was great to go through it. And again, like there's a ton of collaboration that goes into it. A lot of that stuff was actually graded in Munich at our office there, just because they really wanted the collection to stay in continental Europe if possible.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the second or third time that we've done that. A lot of people might not be familiar with the Kian collection of Iranian coins, but that's another collection that we did solely in Munich. Obviously there's issues with sending Iranian coins to the States and back. So we were kind of forced into that in that instance, but it was still a great experience. I felt like we did just as good of a job as we would have if the coins were sent to Sarasota, and the coins did fantastic at auction.
Do you get sent you get sent over to Munich occasionally? Do you do like road trips there to grade?
Yeah, yeah. So we usually do 4 events a year, but sometimes it's only 3. And yeah, it's usually Scott or myself. We're just, switching off. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's neat. And speaking of the L.E. Brun collection, it's interesting. They also chose an American auction house
Yes.
versus, the other collection was they chose a Europe. You would have thought for sure they would have gone with a European auction house. So
Yeah.
I guess it's just a recognition that the money is in America is, they're likely to bring more money if they have an American audience to be, pitch the coins, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was shocking that like an auction house like Brun Rasmussen didn't get that deal. And instead Stax was able to come in and,
Yeah.
submit a pretty firm offer, and it all just worked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to them.
Yeah, they're good for they've got some pretty cool deals, and
Yeah.
it's pretty funny.
Well,
Um,
I think it also speaks to the leadership of the American numismatic process. Call it what we invent third party grading, and we've adopted that so much earlier. I think it's just everything about it. Stax and Heritage are very modern auction companies that are at the
Right.
forefront of this business, and it does feel in a lot of ways that the Europeans are playing catch up a lot.
yeah.
I mean, there's not a third party grading company in Europe that I'm aware of any significance. I'm sure there's some little ones. Yeah, I mean, but in terms of significance, in terms of what you see in the market, they're not leading in that regard either. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that Stax was able to
Yeah,
secure that collection.
yeah, I don't think they're also the Europeans are as used to having to be cutthroat competitive on commission rates as well. So that's
Sure.
that's
They were
probably
caught flat-footed. They were caught
Yeah, right.
flat-footed in that regard.
Yeah, you mean that 20% doesn't work? It's like it's
You pay into the buyer's premium?
That's right.
What is this?
Speaking about all your success with World Coins, and that's all great, but I do hear on the bourse floor, I hate to be a bearer of bad news, but I do hear that your turnaround time has gotten pretty extended on World Coins. Can you talk about that and what you guys are doing to work on that? I mean, it's not my world, but I do hear it on the bourse floor.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we've been extremely busy on the world side basically ever since COVID. I mean, it's been basically like 4 years of nonstop inundation with coins. I think we work long hours. We work Saturdays. We do our best to get through the material. Again, we're like very collaborative, and we care very much about the product. And we understand that people are sensitive to turnaround times. So we're willing to put in the extra work when possible to get the coins out the door. Additionally, we introduced our fast track service. So like for an additional fee relative to your regular tier, you get your turnaround times essentially cut in half for both world value and world standard. So there is an option there if you do need the coins expedited, but we
So
really
how much, explain that a little bit. How much more, how does that work? If let's say it's $30 to get a coin graded, and then you send in 100 of them, and you have an option of doing what?
Yeah, so it's called fast track service. So like, let's say world standard, for instance, I think the turnaround times are right around 60 business days right now. You can choose fast track service, which is an additional $15 on top of that tier price. And basically your turnaround time's cut in half. And it's almost like a white glove service to kind of make sure those coins are moving through the pipeline. And
It's still one step below Express, which saves, so it's like a midway between. So
right. Right.
That's interesting. I don't they offer that for you. They don't do that for US, right? That's
They
a world.
do. No, they offer it for US as well, but it seems like world customers are more interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just one criticism I do hear from people sometimes is you guys charge a grading fee up front, and then it can be, months later to get the coins. And I know that, because some of these small guys that, that cash flow can make a big difference to them, having to figure it. But I'm sure that's an internal thing you guys study a lot. So it's trying to figure out the best way to, because, you got to make the big guys happy, but also the small guys they'll always be there. So,
sure.
trying to do them. So speaking of that, is there any pro tips on like let's say if you're like myself or other like a coin shop on how to submit coins? Is there anything they can do to make your job easier when they submit coins? Or, I always tell people how important it is to get your coins pre-screened if you're just a collector, because I mean almost once a week I got someone bringing me something and they want to submit it for grading. I'm like, that's not economically viable.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
And I imagine you got all kinds of world coins that are like don't make sense. But you guys have any tips for people to do that?
Yeah,
About submitting.
I would say just, do as much research as you can. And, NGC has a lot of resources for people to do that research. Again, we have World Coin Price Guide, we have the NGC census, which is helpful to, understanding, what the typical grade range is for a certain type and whether that makes sense to submit it or not. Um, but as far as pro tips go, I would just encourage people to, fill out the submission form to the best of their ability. Things like putting spink numbers on hammered British coins is very helpful to us in our process because, even if that attribution is incorrect, it's probably at least a solid starting point instead of just like working, with a blank slate. So yeah, I would just encourage people to try to fill out the submission form as best as they can.
Just from my own knowledge, which I should know.
Yeah.
So what is an ancient coin, and where does it stop, and where does it become a world coin? And what are those exact lines?
Yeah. So there's no clear answer to, every single world coin out there. Generally speaking, we're going on the world vintage side, we're going back to, you know, 700 or so at the earliest. There's a few exceptions to that. That's your like really early Islamic, your, Umayyad dinar and dirham. And then you have like some earlier like continental British issues, like some of your like Hibernio Norse issues or like Sciata, things of that nature that are from like the 800s. But there's even some types that both ancients and world do. Things like Armenian trams, that's actually eligible for both ancients and world grading. So there's even overlap.
Yeah, yeah, because I do that occasionally. I'll buy some of these coins of the Crusaders
Right.
issues that I'll send them into the ancients. And now they got to go over to world, and then I got to, okay, is it really in the Crusades and all that stuff? So it's an interesting debate about that. Going back, I know because a lot of people watch that are maybe watching this, and especially some of the younger people. So is NGC, looking to hire some graders? Because I think that when you did your class out in Colorado Springs, that was kind of almost like a recruiting type thing, right?
There was a recruitment aspect to it. Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely actively looking for graders. Yeah, we're always looking for talented individuals that are passionate about coins. Yeah.
This is an interesting question that just popped in my mind. So if someone was really good at authentication or maybe attribution authentication, but like they don't really have the confidence to be a grader, would you guys hire someone just to do like attribution and work like that, or do you guys separate those ever?
Absolutely. Yeah, we would absolutely be interested in that individual. In fact, we might be more inclined to take someone who has a really solid understanding of authentication and attribution, but can't really grade very well, over someone who's an excellent grader, but can't attribute or authenticate.
Okay.
Because, honestly, the authentication portion and the attribution portion, that can take years for someone to master.
Right.
Whereas, the grading is really mostly about like seeing the coins, getting the feedback. That's
Right.
usually a faster process.
And also some people have it and some people don't. I mean, I've
Yeah.
worked with people for my whole career that's like they just don't get grading, and it's just, you know, no matter what you teach them, they won't get it. But they also are brilliant minds that could do that. So that's good information to know if anybody here watching this, that there's career options in numismatics that you don't have to be a coin grader to work at a grading company. So
yeah, I mean, so let's just throw it out there. How would they? What would be the way? Is there a site, a page on your website that has job listings, or how do they reach out? You know, if you're interested in being a grader.
Yeah. So we have several open positions right now. We have an open position for a vintage world grader. So like, you just go on the website and go on the careers tab, and you know, you fill out a resume, and we take it from there. But you know, I'm on LinkedIn, Scott's on LinkedIn. We're both totally approachable. Message us, you know, let's start a dialogue and see if it makes sense to have someone come out.
Yeah. That's a good sign.
Yeah, do you have graders in Asia or Munich that are people? Because so someone wanted to get some international stuff, could they work in those places too if they wanted?
Yeah, so we do offer daily grading in our Shanghai office. So we have a finalizer, and we also have world vintage graders as well, in addition to modern. So yeah, they're totally self-sufficient. Right now, Munich does not have that capability, but you know, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, you got to get the people for it. I guess that's someone to do it.
Well, we have a brand new office in Munich. It's great.
Yeah, it's fun to be there. I haven't been. I've been, it's on my radar. I want to go to the Munich Ancient Coin Show that they have. That's supposed to be, or maybe it's not just ancient, but it's I heard the Munich show is a really good show. So
yeah, people say good things about Numismata. Yeah,
Numismata. That's what's going on. So I saw that in one of your bio things that you're a new father. So you have a new father. That's awesome. You think you're going to try to at 8 years old, you're going to get them buying something?
Yeah, I would love it if there was a fourth generation collector, you know, kind of like keep the streak going. That'd be wonderful. You know, I don't know that I'm going to push it. I don't know that she's going to be sleeping in her crib next to some Kraus catalogs or not. But you know, it'd be wonderful if she was interested in it, and I'd love to guide her through that process.
Listen, at least the red book. Come on. I mean,
I guess start with that. So
at least the red book.
Yeah, that's fun. I think we're kind of getting near the end of our time, but one thing we always ask people is like, what's your personal favorite coin? Like like money or no object, what's your, and I guess maybe it'd be a world coin, but it could be a US coin. So what's your favorite coin?
Yeah, so it honestly it vacillates. But something that I've wanted to see for years that came in somewhat recently was a gold 100 escudo of Spain. Which is just like a fantastic piece. You know, it's the size of like a coaster. It weighs like, 335 grams is ideal weight, just solid gold. It has a great story. It's from the reign of Philip the Fourth, or Philip III. And they were struck at the Segovian Mint, which was the king's mint. So this is the personal property of a Spanish king. And they're minting this like fantastically large gold coin. They're using roller dies, which was like brand new technology at the time. So like very, technologically advanced, and it's just like a beautiful design, and just very rare as well.
Did that come in as part of one of these big collections, or was it like a discovery coin, or what was the circumstances of that coin?
Yeah, so it had sold previously in auction, I believe in a Spanish auction house, but it was about 15 years ago. And so I imagine whoever bought that coin is now about to part with it. And I think it's coming up for auction relatively soon.
Did you have a slab for it that big, or how did you hold it?
Yes, we did.
You did? Okay. Yeah, I guess
amazing.
You guys have been doing these big giant panda coins for a while, so you guys got some big holders. So
yeah, everything up to a 10 kilo.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. How many grams is this coin? 300, you said?
Yeah, ideal weight on 100 escudo would be 335 grams. Yeah.
Like 10 ounce gold.
About 10 ounces. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a cool coin.
Very cool.
That's fun.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this was fantastic. I mean, it's really great to get to know you. And I think it's important for our viewers to see what it's like. You talk to somebody who's in the grading room. It looks like you're kind of in a grading room now. You got that whole dark background thing going on, but you got a lot of personality for a grader, is what I would say.
Thank you.
You seem like you're a really fun guy. So I hope to have a beer with you sometime and tell some war stories.
Yeah,
Are you going to go back
absolutely.
you going to teach at summer seminar again, or you guys are probably pressed for time now? It's probably hard to do that, right?
I would love to. I'd say, yeah, the turnaround times are always something that's front of mind, as well as having the new daughter. But I'd
Oh yeah,
love to. I thought it was a
yeah,
wonderful experience. It was honestly probably one of the most emotional times I've ever had in my life. Just like, going and doing summer seminar as a teenager and then coming back 15 years later and teaching a class was something that was
yeah.
really special for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing that A does. It literally changes lives for some people. So
Yeah.
that's a great thing. So what I hope you make it back out there so people get to know you better. So that'd be fun.
I'd love to.
So well, thanks a bunch for doing it today. I think it's so neat to actually be able to look behind the curtain and see what you guys are doing because what you guys do affects so many people's careers and their business, and it's really tied to the finances of so many individuals and collectors. So it's really we appreciate the tips and the knowledge that you've imparted with people. That's great.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun. I've loved it. Yeah.